I think we're on, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining to our webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the art of integrations, specifically how APIs are driving the evolution of app development. And this is one of the webinars on our series of webinars where at Hello Iconic we meet with clients, partners, and other innovators to talk about topics that we love to work on. We build software and digital products, and it's something that we love to do for our clients. And this opportunity is a good avenue to start talking about specifics of business and technology in this space. To start today, I wanted to give a little bit of an intro about this topic. And the APIs, as you know right now, is a technology that has been around for a while, and we want to talk about this and give you some perspectives from business, from technology, and a little bit of the evolution of the APIs. Our audience today here on the webinar is a mix of companies ranging from small startups to large corporations, and people joining from roles at product management, CTOs, founders, developers, and we're going to try to answer questions for all of them. So if you have questions, you can use the Q&A feature or send it on the comments. Our team is going to bring it to us as we go through the topics. And I want to introduce the panelists that we have here. So the first that I'm going to go introducing is, if you move the slide, is Roberto Medrano. He's the CEO of BeachView Capital, and he's a seasoned technology executive. He's been in multiple companies. He has experience on cybersecurity, AI, API, and architecture. He's right now in the board of more than 30 private companies and nonprofits. And he's part of the High Tech Hall of Fame as one of the top 100 most influential Hispanics in the US in the technology space. Roberto is also our advisor at Hello Iconic, so we work with him every day in strategy and see how the company and our offering evolves. Next, we have Sammy Hansen. She comes from Galileo. She works on the business development area. She has extensive experience on fintech and payment processing industries. She drives the revenue growth of the company and works on customer acquisition at Galileo, especially on the B2B and B2B segments, working with their clients and explore how their solutions can integrate into their business strategies. And last but not least, we have Suzan Chaffin, also from Galileo. She's the Senior Technical Director of Solution Design, and she has more than 20 years of experience on fintech, the strategic leader in designing and implementing Galileo's new offerings. She runs multiple roles in her position with business development, business intelligence, and product management. So welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. And I'm going to introduce myself. I didn't start with that. My name is Alejandro Corpeño. I am the CEO and founder at Hello Iconic, and I have more than 20 years building software and digital products for a variety of clients. In the last 10 years, we've been working a lot with media and entertainment, clients like Disney, ABC, The Walking Dead was a pretty fun project to build, and others in the entertainment, and also fintech, SaaS, and every industry. As technology really eats the world and goes into every industry, we, as a company that works at software, go there. So a little bit about Hello Iconic. We are a company that builds software. We focus on web and mobile applications and any connected device. We have built apps for TV, apps on VR, AR, but mostly is web applications that use APIs, the topic of today, to communicate with those mobile devices. And our applications have been enjoyed by millions of users, and areas like the entertainment, where we created millions of zombies for Walking Dead, and transactions for fintech. Our clients, as you see, we have multiple fintechs like Purpose Financial, Beanstalks, Linker Finance, and media entertainment. Some clients like Cobus and Neil Young are on the music space. So a variety of industries. We like to position ourselves, our innovators in technology, and we can help any innovator create their ideas, make them a reality, regardless of the industry. And we have, since we have you all here, we have really good news that we just got this week. This year we have been awarded with being on the Inc. 5000 list as one of the fastest growing companies in the US on the, well, in our case, well, in general, but in the technology space and software development. So we're really happy about this news. We just were getting this news yesterday or a couple of days ago, and we're making sure everybody knows about it and trying to get the most out of being part of this great community. So we wanted to share that with you also today. Without further ado, we're gonna move to the topic. So we take advantage of the time and the art of integrations for APIs. So for this topic, we wanted to start first with some basic concepts, since we have people joining from different backgrounds. Some are pretty technical, others are more business, others are here just to learn about the topic. So we want to start first with a question for Roberto. And talking about the basics of APIs, could you share a little bit about why APIs are important, or even starting with what an API is and why a business should care about it? Maybe we can then go into a little bit of the evolution of APIs. It has been around for a while, so can you share something about that?
Sure. API, now people all over the web are understanding APIs. Now they know how to spell API, which means Application Programmable Interface, which actually defines how web applications connect and interact to different businesses for data sharing, data migration, et cetera, et cetera. APIs defines really how applications make data requests, the requests that can be made, and the data exchange between different software applications. For instance, a flight tracker app displays the planes and the specific locations. The app receives data and flight tracking and data service using an API. Your Uber has a bunch of APIs. Some of them are maps, some of them are payment that are there. And in terms of accessibility, there are 4 major types of APIs. There's public APIs, private APIs, the partner APIs, and then some composite APIs. As the public APIs suggest, therefore used by different types of public people, a Twitter API, a PayPal API, a partner API. All those are available for people and they're provided by an API provider. Private APIs probably just as the name implies, is internal for different companies to do something internally in that. And then there's, of course, the partner APIs, which is something that you send to your partners to use your APIs and to do something complex for you. There are different models of APIs. I don't know, I want to talk now the different business models that exist for APIs, but there's different places that we can talk later. But it's more important to think about the types of designs that you need for APIs. And as we have this webinar going, we'll talk more about the types of APIs, the models of APIs, and what we need to do. And if you want me to talk about the evolution now, I can also talk about that. Alejandro.
Yes, no, thank you. And I think as a follow-up, and maybe this question, I'll open it to the whole group here, is more about from the way you described it. APIs are a way of sharing data between entities, right? So there's maybe 2 sides of it. Like as a company, we could consume an API from someone else, or we can serve an API, give our information to others. So in this group, maybe we have Galileo, you have both. Maybe you're serving data and you're also consuming. And from Hello Iconic, as implementers, we work with both. Sometimes we create APIs for our clients, we consume a lot. So just wanted to open the question for everyone sharing what are the main roles that you see APIs right now on those two sides, like serving data or consuming data in companies.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one to start. So Galileo absolutely offers both varieties of APIs. We have what we call our program API suite, and that is a web service to interact with cardholder information. We're a financial service full stack company. And so programs can create business accounts, consumer accounts, and send that data to Galileo. So Galileo becomes a system of record. Well, now that company may need to be able to pull some of that information they shared, or they want transaction history. They can then query or send an API call to Galileo to be able to pull that information. But we also have an events API, and so asynchronous API. And so it's based on triggers. For example, I have swiped my card at Target because I want to buy myself a $20 pillow. And as soon as that transaction is approved, we send a webhook to our programs, and they can consume that information and use it in a multitude of ways. So only based on actions would we send that information. So those are our two key API types that we use.
Great. And in those, you're moving financial data, so it's security an important aspect of that? How do you, when we want to consume an API from someone like Galileo, what are the checks or hoops that we want to go through before we get access to that data?
Absolutely. So setting security is absolutely key. So we default to be able to mask all PCI, PII data in any of the API responses that we send. We use a unique key. We call it our PRN, our payment reference number. It's more or less an account number. And so that is what is used to be able to initiate the API calls to be able to pull or push data. When we are sending a webhook, typically it's a JSON web token that we're using to authenticate the validity of the request to be able to then pass that information to have the end user consume it. So we can have the ability to enable that PII, PCI data, but we go through rigorous security and legal checks before we can enable that. And PII and PCI, PII is my name, my address, my social security number, any personal information. PCI data, you can think of it as a full PAN, your card number on the front of your card, or your expiration date, or your CVV. So both flavors of that, but security, utmost importance. Really great question.
Yeah, Alejandro, in addition to what the company does, Galileo, and other companies that they provide APIs, there are also API security components that exist that people can buy, or API management components that the Amazons, the RPGs, the Googles, etc., MuleSoft, they offer, which are gateways, API gateways. We provide extra security, authorization, authentication, rate limiting, obfuscating of different things through an API gateway. And that's another level of security that people use within API security.
Mm-hmm. And one question for Sammy, when you are talking on the business development side, it must be maybe tough to sell this technical product. Like if a business person is like, want to work with you and what you give them is an API, how do you walk them through that? Or what's it like to sell and enable this product when it is mostly documentation of how to send an endpoint?
Well, APIs are certainly evolving outside of your traditional financial APIs, right? Things like insurance, transportation, really specialized products. And so in my unique position, I get to hear all of these new ideas for all of these really specialized products to serve niche markets. And I like to think of Galileo as Legoland, where they're using all of these Lego pieces or these APIs to build these specialized products. An example would be, let's say Julie is a musician, and she has an app that has all of the traditional banking features that you would expect, but it also has specialized products that connect to different income streams like Spotify. So now she gets all of her financial products in one place via API. It's certainly challenging to kind of explain the architecture of how this all works, especially when I'm speaking mostly to the dreamers. But at Galileo, you kind of get an army of people to kind of help build this out. We bring in people like Suzan, or our BSA team, our business solutions architects. They're really going to draw this out and make it more digestible.
Great. And as a company that runs APIs, maybe you Roberto, in your experience, what are some of you mentioned some API gateways and security. So what are the elements that you have to be aware of if I start a company and I need to have an API? What are the technologies or layers that I have to think about? It's not just about building an app that has an endpoint, right? Like what elements are important to consider?
Well, in the past, people only develop applications, for example, an actual complete software application, software product. But now software products are really divided within multiple APIs within the software product. So now you have to have the strategy for not the product only or the plan for a product, but now you have to have the strategy within the product. What are the APIs that you're using? Are you using third-party APIs or are you developing APIs yourself? And it depends on the business model, on the strategy and the implementation that you want to do. There's considerations on the implementation that need to be considered, right? Who's going to do it? Who's got the expertise? What type of API you're going to use on your design? For example, are you some of the most common classes of API styles are either web APIs, database APIs, operating system APIs, remote APIs, and within that you have specific things. Could be payment API, authorization API, et cetera, like we're talking in the financial world. And other components, you have Maps API and everything. So the design of it and the architecture of it is quite important, because then you have a business model after that you need to figure out. I can talk about business model now, or we can delay that for the rest of the team to speak more about this API's design and what you need to do within your product.
Yeah, I think we can dig deeper into business model in a later stage in this webinar. I wanted to comment also that at Hello Iconic, since we build software for so many, like Sammy says, like the dreamers, like they come with an idea, and we help them identify also like what is core to their business that they have to build, and what is also things that they should consider APIs, right? Instead of building the whole infrastructure for example, maps, you can use Google Maps and just integrate via an API. The same with, for example, if you want to detect a face, we can plug to an API. You can take the photo and we send it to an API to detect if it is a face or not. So evaluating what needs to be built and what is also something you can use an API for is one of the important stages of when you're trying to think about the strategy about building an idea. So to that, I wanted to ask, and again, like an open question, but the APIs in reality help you build faster, right? Like you said, like building blocks. So what things are really common that you think in general that innovators or people trying to build software should already consider, like this should be an API, an external, I shouldn't build this? What are things that are really common right now that people should use APIs?
I hear it every day. Somebody says the buzzer word, I need a white labeled turnkey solution. We don't have the internal resources to build out the front end. So we just want to slap our logo on something. Or they're looking for a dev shop that's already got some of these in the tool bag. One of the unique things that I often point to is that Hello Iconic has built out a company called Linker Financial. And the way I like to look at it is kind of like a WordPress template where you can drag and drop these things that you need into your program without having to completely reinvent it or write out an entire HTML script. You can kind of Frankenstein your vision of your product.
Yeah, no, that's a great and to talk about a little about Linker, the way we built it was especially after building custom software for a lot of the fintech clients, we saw that we were doing the same things over and over again, integrating into an identity provider, integrating into a BaaS provider, integrating into the payments provider. So doing all of these API integrations was work that we were doing custom for every client. So what we did is package all of those integrations, have them in a tool set, and now that is that product, Linker, where you can just buy Linker, it's a license, and we configure it to connect to the APIs that you need, and then you have a fintech app built in a couple of weeks instead of like 18 months or more. So that's a great example of the APIs and how that helps build faster.
Yeah, no, talking about that, really, if you're talking about this Linker Finance example, if you're gonna need some authorization mechanism. So there's APIs with Auth0. If you need payments, there's APIs with Plaid, with Stripe, some fintech like Galileo. If you need an SMS platform for messaging, there's APIs with Twilio. I mean, Twilio, basically the entire business model is APIs, messaging for APIs. And all those are available for anybody to just use rather than, it's already integrated. So you can do banking as a service very, very quickly. You can do money movement very quickly. You can do loan origination company very quickly. You can perhaps create a brokerage solution of some kind that you want to get, and integrations with CRM systems. So imagine that in the old days, you have to build all these things. Now you got components that you can just pick and choose, and some of them are already integrated within platforms like this one, and many others that exist out there.
You know, Roberto, you bring up a really great point. You know, some people come to Sammy and I and the team, and like, we want to be able to we want to be the next insert, you know, really successful fintech name. And it's, well, we're going to connect to Galileo, but there are so many third parties that you have to think about. But there are other considerations you need to think about with APIs and why maybe using a Hello Iconic or a Linker, you know, might be a really good first start. You know, I think a lot of people forget about scalability, performance considerations, network dependencies. You know, I talk to a lot of companies. I'm like, tell me about your staff. Tell me about your experience in payments. Well, I've got one person in a garage with a dream. Well, that's wonderful. That could probably be the brightest person in the entire world, but you're not going to scale fast and your VCs may not like that. So being able to partner with teams that actually can support the scale and the performance, because, you know, you may start off with 1,000 account holders, but you're going to quickly scale. And how do you handle events coming in or webhooks, or being able to pull the APIs and build a data store, a transaction service, you know, quickly and scale. And if anybody has been trying to hire developers in the last 2 years, you will know how difficult it is to retain and hire talent. So that's something else that absolutely, you know, we bring up with every single one of our conversations with our prospects. Of let's evaluate, let's see what makes the most sense. There are, you know, fabulous solutions, again, like Hello Iconic and Linker, that can be a plug and play, but still very unique, that you can customize the solution and really get up and running fast. You want proof of concept? You want to be able to get up and running? Well, this is a very, very easy way to do so.
Well, that's good. In other places, you're going to have to create your own APIs based on your business model. So like you and Galileo, you develop your own APIs for your business model. And those have different considerations. Some business, you can put together a bunch of things together, maps and payments and other things. In some business, you have to develop your own APIs, and you need really good developers to actually, and architects to be able to develop a good API that has the right components and it's not going to crash all the time.
You're right.
We've seen, I mean, one example that comes is one of those famous streaming platforms that doesn't have good cache and it's always caching and it's very slow. I don't want to name the names, you may know what that is, but it's a famous big company. But if you don't do the right architecture, your streaming platform is going to be a problem. You can imagine that Netflix has APIs that deliver to more than 800 devices the same content. You can get on your phone, you can get on your iPad, you can get on your computer, you can get on your TV. All these things have different delivery mechanisms, but they're able to do that API structure very well to be able to deliver that to their consumer.
Yeah. And one question now going specifically into APIs, but for financial services. Like we have worked with APIs for I would say entertainment, like fun things. Like there's not a big problem if I send a request and I get an answer or it's down for 5 minutes. But in financial services, it is money, right? It is things that are depend and are regulated. So what are some of the things that if I am a founder right now and I want to start a fintech, what are some, is there like compliance or special licenses I need to have to, if I want to create a fintech? What are considerations beyond the technical side that I need to consider? And as a follow-up, are the APIs taking care of that for me? I don't have to have any of those compliances because my provider has it. Is that a topic that you want to say something about?
I could jump in on that one. You know, I wish APIs could solve everything, and I wish AI was at a point where compliance and regulatory was already taken care of in an auto-magical way. But unfortunately, there still is work that an embedded finance and a fintech need to do. Let me rattle off a list. Compliance and regulatory, you know, that's KYC, AML, legal and liability considerations, security and data protection, partnerships, compliance, user education, risk management. You know, so some of these absolutely can be, you know, a risk management using Galileo's PRP, which is a fraud engine based on AI and machine learning. Customer support, dispute resolution. While Galileo does have a dispute API, there's still a human component to it to be able to evaluate. Financial expertise and partnerships, customer support, I think I already mentioned that one, monitoring and auditing. So when a partner comes to Sammy, and then she sends them to me, they have an idea, and they still need a bank behind it. So Galileo is a partner that we're a software partner as well. You know, we're a platform that is a system of records. You know, think of us as a ledger solution with so many bells and whistles. So, you know, everything that any of the big fintechs do today, we power that. But there is just a lot that goes into it. You need a sponsor bank, you need an emboss vendor, you know, the list goes on and on. And so again, there's a lot that comes with it. And so having some of these components via API already built out and partnering with a solution for a plug and play is an amazing road to go down. So again, you can work on some of these other items that are not necessarily API driven yet.
I'll definitely jump in on this one too. So talking to a lot of startups, if you, in this example, are a startup, I think one of the most important things to consider or understand is there are two different paths that you can take. One is being your own program manager, and the other is rolling up to one. So to kind of digest it in a more simplified manner, the way that I look at it or explain it is that there's really 4 key players. You've got the network, Visa, MasterCard. You've got the issuing bank, so you don't have to go and become a bank charter and get a sponsor bank. You have the processor, and then the program manager. But what's been happening and evolving more and more is these new BaaS players. And what they do is they introduce a 5th player. And so instead of banking as a service, not in a negative way, but I like to explain it as banking out of a box, because then they don't need to go and do all of the AML, BSA policies, have all these option fatigues with different vendors. All of these things are in a box to where they can plug and play, get to market, scale up, prove out the concept, and graduate over eventually.
And what is, I know you mentioned about like the main difference between like the BaaS, like the banking as a service, and this concept of the bank out of the box, like what's additional there?
Yeah, so they're technically a program manager. Ask 50 different people in fintech what a program manager is, you'll probably get 50 different answers.
Yeah.
But the way that Galileo defines it is who owns the paper with the bank. Whoever has that contract, that's the program manager. And so some of these program managers have the business model that is to basically simplify the ecosystem and to sign up programs underneath them that roll up under their program.
Okay, great, thanks. And I think one of the questions that I had maybe for Roberto was when APIs can solve a lot of problems for a startup or for a company, right? But you're then kind of depending on them, right? So how are those conversations when you advise startups or you're in boards? Like, are there any pushbacks against relying too much on APIs, or what part of the business can you rely on, which you should keep and build yourself?
Well, in some cases, you're going to have to do your own development, but in other cases, it will take you too long to do your own development. So you have to work with service level agreements of some kinds, especially if things go down from their side, especially if some APIs have a a throttle where you are premium service versus other people. All those things are in consideration to make sure that your product or your service it's operating correctly.
And that takes me to a question maybe for all of you also. When you mentioned, Roberto, about the different business models, I know that a lot of the APIs allow the consumers to play with them. Like you can use them for free until you reach a quota or a number of requests. So, but even those free requests are costing the company money, right? So what is the typical business model of an API provider company? Is it always something that you need to consider to give some free access so people can play with it and learn and even stay there for a while and then convert them, or is
there is a couple of business models. One is the developer pays, another one is the developer gets paid, and another one is an indirect type of a business model. Let me go in a couple of things on the first one, developer pays. You have pay as you go, and it's based on your strategy. You pay as you go. Amazon Web Services is one example that pay as you go, right? You use it, you get some free credits, and then you got to pay. So basically, that's you pay as you go. A freemium is somebody that wants you to use a platform. Amazon is sometimes a freemium with credits, but the most freemium example is like Google Maps, that you use them for free forever. But in some cases, you may have to pay for some things. Other things will be like developer has to pay for when they use it per unit, or developer has to pay for a transaction fee like PayPal or Stripe or any of those for transaction fee. And then there's others that are tiered. So that's the developer pay model. There's like 4 or 5 different components on developer has to pay. The other one is developer gets paid. You get maybe revenue share from like Google AdSense, for example. You get some affiliates that like shopping.com, like some referrals that are there. All those are part of developer gets paid. Developer could be a company, and that's you get paid based on your APIs. The indirect model is a little more complicated because in direct business model, you have content acquisition, for example, eBay and content, right? They get paid. SaaS, Salesforce.com, they give you something and you get upsell. Some of the things are included in your SaaS. Maybe some things are content syndication, like in New York Times or the newspapers. I had content syndication, a bunch of APIs to put content together from different sources to get payments and other things. And then, as I mentioned before, there's some internal use, indirect, where, for example, Twitter gets content, but then they get paid through ads. Mobile devices, I mentioned Netflix on the distribution of their content, and you can go on and on to other consumer-facing or internal-facing type of API. So it depends on your business model, what you're going to do with all these different APIs. And as I mentioned, those big three from the top, if you go doing direct, you got to figure out what your pricing strategy is going to be, or your marketing strategy is going to be. If you're doing a developer gets paid, the same thing. And finally, you don't have to do as much as developer get paid as you pay as a developer, but you're still going to pay somebody for it's going to be a cost of goods sold for you.
Mm-hmm. And on the Galileo side, what is your business model regarding APIs, or do you have a mix of all of them?
Sammy, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So there's monolithic, right, where you've got bundled, and then there's microservice for unbundled. But typically it's going to come down to three main APIs: the program API, events API, and auth.
Okay. And on the bundle, this is like you buy them all together, or how is that, or the microservice? What are the difference?
Yeah, so instead of with the microservice and unbundling, you're able to take some of this and some of that to create something new. With a bundle, you're going to get checking and savings accounts, right? Some of those more standard and traditional blocks.
And you charge per transaction, or per what do you charge?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different pricing models, but most of the time it is just a per transaction, so per API call.
Okay.
We do offer a sandbox environment, and so we don't require any paid subscription to be able to start using our sandbox model. All a developer needs to do is send an inquiry via our amazing documentation site, and they can start using our sandbox even post-ban. You can download the collection, and within minutes, you're sending API calls. And so absolutely, we've had multiple clients even just build an app, a demo app using our sandbox. And then once they're ready and they want to sign a contract with Sammy and team, that's where we get into the paid pricing model.
Oh, that's great to know, because that's usually how developers start. Like, you just want to play with it before, see what it does, even build a POC, and then you can bring the business conversation, right? So that's great to know. And people can find that on the Galileo site. There's like a documentation or API section.
Absolutely. Our documentation probably is second to none. And so you can see all of our APIs, the program API that Sammy mentioned, that's, the consuming and sending data, the events API, we have an auth API, disputes API, loan API, you just keep going. But all of our different languages, examples of calls and response, different recipes, all of it's included within. We've invested a great deal of resources into building that so it's state of the art, just because we care so much about the developer experience. Awesome.
And talking about that, the playing with APIs, lately I have been playing a lot, and we have people in Hello Iconic playing with artificial intelligence, like AI APIs, and that's a wave right now that's coming right on the technology side. So I wanted to ask, how is that for you right now? Let's start maybe with Suzan. How is this current API wave impacted your product roadmap? Like, do you have AI already in some of them that we don't know about, or are you thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Galileo's had AI within our fraud rules engine for many, many years. So it's a rules and scoring engine that looks at a customer and their spend history, etc. But with the development that's come with more of the modern AI, oh boy, it's impacted our roadmap and what we've built out and enhanced even our fraud rules engine. We incorporate not just the authorization and the customer history, but we pull in data from other sources to be able to look holistically at a transaction. And I'll have Sammy go into a little bit more detail on that, but enhanced natural language understanding, data analytics. We have a chatbot solution where it's a conversational AI that we offer. So absolutely, I mean, that's just a couple of the examples of how Galileo uses machine learning and AI, but it is central to the future and the growth of the entire industry.
Oh, so yeah, let's follow up with Sammy. What are some of those that you currently have, and how do you, do you talk with that with your clients? Are they coming to you asking for specifically for AI-powered solutions?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, one of the big topics is fraud. Companies are seeing tons of fraud, and especially with AI being on both sides of the table. So the way we kind of use it, we have a payment risk platform that's going to analyze different spending patterns or geolocation. Let's say that I'm in Utah and I make a transaction, and then 20 minutes later, there's a transaction that occurs in Japan. Well, that's a pretty obvious one to maybe flag, but as it gets smarter, you can set different risk profiles depending on, the risk appetite of that program, whether it be a new account that you want to set a lot more parameters that are stricter around, or if it's an older account that does have some unique spending patterns. So you can set that risk profile and customize those different parameters. And the other one that Suzan mentioned, right? Everyone's hearing everything about the chat GPT. It's a big one out there. Well, financial services, community banks, big banks, little banks, they're able to connect with or plug in our Connecta solution. That's an empathetic chat bot that's able to tie to their account, ask questions, or give different, whether it's check if the transaction went through, if it's check balance, or it's empathetic and can pass it off to a live agent if necessary as well.
Yeah, what I've seen, at least since we're talking fintech first, is fraud is one of the main use cases. Chatbots is the next one for new clients or the customers. Existing customer service is the third area where AI has been used quite great. And then market penetration in terms of global reach, if you have. And last will be the offering products a la Amazon. You like this product, maybe you should like this other product. So you have like 5 to 6 AI cases. By the way, my talk next week is about AI, so that's kind of what I'm
Awesome. And I think we're getting some questions from the audience, and I know, Suzan, you already answered one, but maybe we can bring it to the conversation here and answer it for everyone, right? So I'll just read the question, and since you answered it, Suzan, maybe you can give it a live answer here. So the question comes from Mukesh Thakur, and he asks, what are common challenges faced by enterprises who expose and consume APIs? And what solutions Hello Iconic offer as a solution? Oh, so they asked specifically to Hello Iconic.
Yes, they asked you. So I put in the responses, and I already mentioned scalability, performance, network dependencies. But then also if it's an asynchronous load and efficiency utilization, delayed data, event handling. But tell us how Hello Iconic.
Yeah. So, the question asks about the two sides, right? Consuming and exposing your API. So first, for consuming, we are, as we mentioned, we are a custom software shop. So the things we do for consuming APIs, for example, is you should always have a failover scenario, because sometimes APIs are not available. So first consider caching layers also. So sometimes you need to get data from an API, but usually if you're pinging an API frequently to see the change of status or something, those don't change that often. So you can cache the results and stop on one side. Sometimes you get billed by the API vendor for every request. So you want to avoid having to hit too many times. So if you cache the results, you don't have to go back to the API every time. If you know a piece of data only changes 2 times a day, you make your software in a way that it caches the first result, and then every piece of the software that needs that data goes to the cache. So that's one that takes care of cost and also on the backup of reliability of the actual API. Another thing we use is having processes that check the stability of the external APIs. So you can have on your DevOps setup, we can create like monitors to check all of our APIs and alert us if one is down or if one is having issues, because that is going to help us have our software be aware of some parts that are not going to be responsive right there. So that goes to your point of network dependency and performance. So we need to be aware that all of these APIs are going to have, in a variety, the most mature are not having too many issues. But even, if you go to the status page of AWS or Heroku, there's always an issue somewhere. So you need to just be aware that things fail, and usually they get resolved fast. But having those tools is one of the things we do. On the flip side, if you are the one exposing the API, then you have to take care of those issues. You have to make sure your network is stable. You have to be sure that you have at least some redundancy. So you need to have load balancers in place, because sometimes you get a little amount of requests, but if there's a big event that brings a lot of users to your site, it needs to be able to respond in the same latency that you used to have. So your consumers are probably expecting 10 millisecond response time or 20 millisecond. But if you're getting 1,000 times the number of requests that you usually get, your servers are going to get overwhelmed and your response times are going to suffer. So being able to set up an environment that can auto scale is really important when you have APIs, because your success could be your doom. If you're too successful, your systems are going to go down. So you need to be able to serve a lot of capacity, but in a way that is auto scalable. So you only pay for the capacity that you're using on your servers. So that's some of the tools that we or strategies that we use when we are building APIs for our consumers. So thank you for your answer there also, Suzan. Yeah. Let's see, we have other questions. So Carolina Palacios asked one. One of the most frequent requests we get for APIs is to integrate to ERPs. Is to integrate the client's ERP with other systems, such as a web or payment platform. Would it be beneficial to establish a standardized model for this type of requirement? So the ask of connecting an ERP with a payment provider. So are there any standards right now out there, or every provider is different?
Well, every provider that we've run into seem to have some differences. MasterCard and Visa both have APIs and solutioning to be able to incorporate payments into an ERP system, smart data, for example. And so Galileo is connected to that. But as far as, a standalone ERP, it's traditionally more of a middleware solution that is normalizing the data to be able to push that in, again, outside of a Visa and MasterCard that we're aware of from the Galileo side. I'm not sure, Sammy, if you have any other inputs on that.
I think all depends what they're trying to do. I mean, yes, you can, for example, you have an SAP platform, you can do purchasing easily for your supply chain. You can do inventory management very easily. You can do whatever you produce in the shop very easily. So all those APIs exist. You can pay for things also once you order things. If you want to integrate, for example, I just did this with another company, SAP to Salesforce CRM. There's APIs already built in that you can build the stuff into those kind of systems. On this particular one, I'm not sure what's not there or what needs to be implemented, because today you can do a lot of payments. You can pay through your Visas and credit cards, whatever you buy. Some companies basically just do a lot of that buying every day through the SAP platforms.
Yeah, and I think sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say SAP is a great platform. Absolutely. That would be more of the middleware from a Galileo perspective and a MasterCard Visa. But yeah, just a plus one.
Yeah, if you're talking ERP, I mean, SAP and some of those large, big monolithic applications been around for a long time and now converted to a cloud, they have evolved a lot to be able to provide hooks for other companies to do things.
And I wanted to mention also that in that question, from our perspective, also, we work with a lot of clients, and sometimes they ask these things like they have different ERPs, but they want to integrate to payments. And that's one of the reasons we created Linker. Like what we did is we abstract the differences between different payment providers, and we have our own like middleware. So we could integrate as an internal tool at Hello Iconic to any payment provider, because we build those that are agnostic. So we can have a module in software already built that could connect to Stripe or to PayPal or to Visa directly. We take care of the differences in the code, but the middleware could standardize the usage on a specific piece of software. So I think my answer or recommendation to the person asking is like, if you build software for clients and they're asking for different integrations, you can start building your own tools that already abstract and integrate to the different providers that you get asked to connect to. And that way you can start simplifying that for you, because there's not like a standard out there. So every provider has their own API, but you can standardize it for your own purposes on how you integrate to them. We have another question, and this one says, how companies usually handle the regulatory aspect of APIs when they are used from other countries, as each country has its own data regulatory regulations and some others don't. So I think this is a good question, because I guess you have consumers from everywhere, right? From all over the world. And are there differences based on regulations?
There are absolutely differences based on regulations, but it's more around feature functionality and PII. Think about Europe and GDPR and having to redact data upon a customer request. I don't want my information stored. You need to be able to remove it. APIs, I'd say the hardware behind different solutions or requirements. And the storage of the data are more key than the APIs themselves. You know, occasionally we need to be able to add additional data elements because address length or different questions, geolocation. In Mexico, the CMBV, their regulations are ever evolving, and oh my goodness, the things that we have to be able to capture and send via, you know, the APIs change. And so I'd say it's more of a country-to-country feature functionality than necessarily the APIs, but then security and being able to stand up redundancies in various regions with AWS is another consideration.
Yeah, some of those issues are related, like Susan just say, it's you cannot store European data in the United States, for example, so you have to figure out how your APIs are going to work. Others are like, I have a company that does software for cannabis retailers. And cannabis has different regulatory environment. In the United States, it's state by state. It's legal in Canada, for example, so you don't have that. But state by state here, you have different regulatory environments. California is different than Colorado. Colorado is different than Oklahoma. So the software and the APIs have to take that in account when they do labels. For example, the labels that you do, all that stuff has to be in the software, but you have to follow the regulatory bodies to be able to provide the solution.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I think we have one more question that we can cover before we wrap up. I think this question is really technical. It's from Joaquin El Cerro. He asks, is there a model to bring new data to something more structured to be served by an API? How to prepare your data to be served by APIs? So I don't know who wants to tackle that, or Roberto, if you have an idea, like, how to structure your existing data on your system, right? To serve it in an API.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where, how is that, of course, the API, if you have something that you have data to provide to other people, you have to structure the API on a database that is going to be able to serve it out. And then how you serve it is the other interesting point. The preparation of the data, of course, would take some time based on your structure, how you're going to do architecture and structure what data you're serving.
Mm-hmm.
From Galileo, an example of that is, we consume the raw ISO 8583 message, and that has to be parsed because it's just one long string. We parse that information and we store it, and then we serve it out based on a more structured methodology. So we break it out into tag 1, tag 2, tag 3, tag 4, and we don't require our clients to have to parse that message every time. And so it is about consuming, parsing, storing, and then serving.
Yeah, that's a great example.
And then serving it to the right device, by the way.
Yeah, and on the bank side, they've got an even heavier lift because they've got multiple processors that are sending in different languages or different raw data files that they've got to digest as well.
Yeah, that makes me think on experiences where we have had like different ETL processes getting data from everywhere, but we need to consolidate in one single structure. So to the person asking, also maybe looking at, we did some work with AWS Glue. It allows you to plug different data sources and then create a schema that serves it back in an API. So that's one tool that you can use, and you can have different data sources. So one could be a lot of CSV files that are unstructured, and you create a script that then parses the information and store it in a table that then gets served to the API. And you can decide if the API is going to be a REST API, then you have the traditional structures of a RESTful API or something else. But getting the data sources on an unstructured way from different sources, and then consolidating in a specific structure or schema that then you serve out to the world as an API would be something that you can take a look at, the AWS Glue service. And I think that's the last question we will be able to answer. We're already on time. So before we wrap up, just wanted to open for any closing words that you want to give from each one of you before we say goodbye to our people here in the webinar. So we can start with Sammy. Any final words from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out to Suzan. Thank you for pushing it through. You guys probably didn't even know, but she's sick with COVID right now, and she's still sharper than ever. So thank you, and thanks for having us. It's been awesome.
No, thank you. Suzan.
Just thank you so much for the opportunity. We're really so grateful for our partnership and to be able to collaborate on technical and business. So thank you to everyone. And if anyone has any questions, Sammy and I are always grateful to and eager to be able to help anyone in the community. So
great. Thank you, Suzan.
Just for me, API, the building blocks, just consider us as your building blocks for the future. And I love APIs, and I still have t-shirts that says I love APIs and sweatshirts. I was gonna wear that today, but I figure I better look like this today than my t-shirts where I love APIs.
Thank you, Roberto, and thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you, and we are always doing these webinars. We'll, if you signed up, you're gonna start getting emails about how you saw the content. We wanna improve, and then you will get invitations for the next webinars. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye.
Awesome.